But, beloved, these expectations that are out there that spouses have with each other, that friends have with each other, that church members have with their pastor, their church, you name it, they're just crushing.
Especially the unmet ones.
Yes.
Let's talk about it.
Let's do it. Brian, something looks different about you this week. I can't quite put my finger on it. You got any idea what's going
Am I
on?
glowing?
Just slightly.
Okay.
Have you been out in the sun?
I've been out in the sun. I've actually been on a honeymoon in the sun, so maybe that's what it is.
Oh, you got married.
I got married. You were there.
I was there.
You did the wedding.
It was, I'm so happy for you to be married, but man, you waited a long time to get married, didn't you?
I did.
Like, we've seen a lot of people come through our sphere of influence, and, the first pretty girl that walks by, they're gone. It's like we'll just be getting on track with, the Lord is the most important thing in my life, and I just want to live for Jesus. And next thing you know, you don't see him anymore. And it's heartbreaking a lot of times because it seems to take precedence. But I know what they're feeling and what they're thinking is this is, I'm just captivated. I'm just so consumed. But you were different. I've known you for probably 9 years now, and we've been in a pretty close relationship for that time. And there's been plenty of opportunities for you to chase after a woman or getting into a relationship. But why did you wait for so long? What was the deal? What was going on?
Well, I mean, in the last 14 years, I have been on a few dates, but as far as a pursued relationship, it didn't come until recently or in the last year or over the last year. And you brought up a good point. The journey that we've been on with a lot of men who are recommitting their relationship with the Lord, really wanting to prioritize and really follow him. It seems that when there is the highest level of sensitivity to the Lord and what he's been doing in your life, that level of intimacy often is challenged and competed with because someone will come along. There's just a higher sensitivity to the opposite sex or finding someone or sharing it. I don't know. There's a sense of awareness that maybe not been there, and then you and I, inadvertently in conversation with them, say, "Hey, I'm focused. I'm not going to get distracted. This is something I've done before. I don't want to do this again." Blah blah blah. And then right off the bat, we find out, that they. And we've had those conversations after they had gotten married and said, I probably moved, maybe I was a little distracted. I don't have any regrets in that regards, but I'm not as ready as I would like to be, and I'm having some challenges. You've known me for 9 years, you know that, but I wasn't looking, and our story is very, very unique. But oftentimes, meeting my wife, she was not on my radar screen. She was part of a journey that I was on at a local church, spending time with leadership and just really connecting with that church, going on a journey. I had no idea. Even when I was in relationship with her, she was not someone that I was attracted to. It wasn't until after I began to ask her to share her journey and we began to talk, neither one of us were interested. And I love that because I wasn't attracted to her till a little bit later down the road, and even then I didn't communicate that. And the first thing we did was we announced that nothing was more important than our relationship with the Lord. And so if there was just something to become of that, we were going to walk this out and have a friendship that we may have never had in our past. And There's a great saying. It's in one of the movies. I think A Walk to Remember. It says, "Love is friendship on fire." So that's pretty much sums us up.
Yeah. Well, what impressed me the most about as long as I've known you is you were patient. You said, I don't want to find somebody that isn't on fire for Jesus like I am. I want somebody that can enhance, go alongside me on this journey and not just find somebody because they were pretty or they made you feel like you weren't alone or something like that. You weren't interested in that because you were, quite frankly, you were sold out for Jesus. You had discovered that He was all you need and He was meeting all your expectations. And so we're going to talk about expectations during this time
That's good.
because some of the hardest situations, the biggest hurts come from expectations that were not met. And we'll get into these situations thinking that we're going to get something or there's, something we find that we might can get. And so we do all this investment and we don't get the return we're looking for. And it causes the relationship to sour in a lot of instances, especially with, you know, friends, family, finances, that sort of thing.
It's a great point that you brought up. Most of the people, when we meet with them, and us included, when we first met, and most of all the unmet expectations that we were finding in conversations with people's life journey all went back to an unmet expectation they felt God was supposed to meet, and He didn't. So because He didn't, it changed their view or perspective of Him and how they lived out their life, and they were always disappointed or was always greatly affected and had a sense of always, well, there you go, that's all, that's just my luck, that's God, that's how God does, we've heard that misconstrued. Yeah.
Oh yeah, plenty of times. And it can really hurt a marriage if you enter into a marriage thinking, one thing and expecting it to be a certain way based on your experiences or, what, public, media promotes. If you watch movies, there's always these fairy tale, romantic scenarios. And, I think a lot of people are looking for that kind of a love affair or for a woman or a man to meet that expectation. And so a lot of times when we get into relationships, we'll just talk about marriage a little bit because it's the most intimate, form of relationship we have on this earth. It's easy to start expecting a spouse that they owe you something. And anytime we get into this relationship without this incredible intimacy with God, it puts a great deal of pressure on our spouse because we're trying to get this unnatural expectation met, whether it be physical or mental, emotional, whatever it is. If we try to get that from the other person, and it's not natural for them to give it to you, or they don't feel like it, then the weight of that expectation crushes them. And I read that in a book a while back. It was a great book.
And it's true.
Yeah, it was talking about how weighty those expectations can be on the other person. I've even found, in the communication with, people, we say things inadvertently, and our spouse hears it or our friends hear it, and then they pick up on, oh, that's the way they are. That's what they're expecting, and I can't do that. So people are always listening and cueing. We had a mutual friend one time. He was always praising his wife when she was doing ministry with him. And I mean, he would just brag and go on about how, he just loved the way she ministered to people. But then there was this hardship that they were going through, because she was getting, down and kind of almost depressed about things and stuff like that. And one day I noticed it. I just saw the look on her face. And I asked him, I met with him one time because he opened up to me about having problems. And I said, "Can you think of times you praise your wife for just other things besides ministry?" And he had to sit there and think about it. And he come to the realization that no. And I said, it seems like to me the only time she gets praise is when she's doing ministry according to your standards. And it wasn't real natural for her. Don't get me wrong, she enjoyed, doing it, but it got to be like, okay, in order to get this kind of praise from my spouse, I'm going to have to perform, and I'm just not up to it. And so the more it was an expectation because he was communicating it in his praise, the more it was causing her to withdraw. And later on, after we had that talk, he talked to her and he said, "Hey, I feel like I've been putting all this pressure on you and this and that." And he just kind of went through it. And he said, let me tell you this, from now on, you're free. There's going to be no more expectations. I love you just the way you are, unconditionally. And she started crying, and she just come up to him and she just held him and just hugged him, and just tears were rolling down her eyes because it was like she was released out of prison.
That's good.
And he had no idea this was going on. And he just thought, "Man, I'm just praising you for something I like to do." And so we inadvertently communicate those things to our spouse without even knowing it.
I met with a couple just the other day, and I said, "Tell me, what your challenges are." And first thing was communication, and it was amazing to be able to talk to them about that. It seems that our relationship with the Lord is very much like our relationships, even with the spouse. If we're struggling with communication with our spouse, it may be a reflection of the very same things that we're struggling with the Lord. Because when we do spend time and we make time and we're sensitive to Him, we take on His character, and it bleeds into other relationships. And one of the things that I really like about the journey that I'm on right now with my wife now is we've started a pattern of behavior of praying for one another even before we got married. But now that we're under the same roof, we're able to do that personally in the mornings. It sets the climate and the temperature of the entire day in the relationship. It just creates an enormous amount of freedom to breathe and enjoy, because there is someone much bigger than us that we rely and depend on and lean into to help us be like Him, so we can be what we need to be to each other. Unfortunately, I can't say that I did that in the first 20 years that I was married. If it's, you can't go back and redo. All you can do is say, "What can I do to learn from this?" And so it's great. It's nice, but unmet expectations, and that I expect you to contribute and bring happiness to me, meet my needs. That is probably the biggest thing, because there are needs that can be very beneficial when spouses are sensitive to one another, but there are things that only the Lord can fill that void and bring completion to, that your spouse will never be able to consistently be able to meet. It's just I remember the first time you ever said that phrase to me. I never forgot it because it resonated.
Which one was that?
The weight of your expectations can crush another.
Yeah. I wished it was mine. You know something I found about the expectations, because I've been married to my wife for 11 years. We dated for a couple of years, and I know the first part of our relationship, I was pretty broken. So there was a lot of, I think, things that I wanted and needed in the relationship, and didn't have a real close relationship with God at that time. Because it was only about, just right before I met you that I just had this incredible transformation. I've talked about it frequently. Uh, but I remember, we were both kind of coming out of a bad situation. We both had been divorced, and we both had been, extremely hurt. We both had children from our other marriage. So there was a lot of tricky navigating and situations that was coming up. And, in the beginning, what really attracted me to my wife was how she mothered her children. She was an incredible mother. And I liked that she was able to make that more important than just about anything. I was like, boy, what resistance. Because, the women I saw and was around and things, they were, into, going out and doing things. And sometimes they would leave their kids behind, and so I just thought it was real responsible. That was the impression I got. But then after we got married, I started feeling like, aren't I supposed to be more important than the children? And forgot the whole reason I was attracted to her in the first place. So I remember going through this time where I just thought, I'm never going to be important enough. I'm always going to be maybe second class, or that sort of thing. But what I was dealing with was this self-focus on me and what I wanted out of the relationship. And I wasn't really worried about the other things. And I'm realizing now, after all this time, it takes a lot of time and trust being built up between two people, that they can really be honest with one another and communicate openly. Like, you can't just come out with your expectations just all of a sudden one day and say, hey, this is what I need from you, and I need to get it. It never goes well. You have to earn that. You have to be patient. You have to really respect the other person's past, their positions on things, what they're willing to do, what they're not willing to do, and really make it not about you. And I found, we're really living, from my perspective, in some really good times. We're having the best part of our relationship now because I don't need those things. I've found them in the Father, but yet I'm able to communicate more openly and clearly because we trust each other, and she knows what I'm about. Before, she didn't. She didn't know if I was going to run away in a year or 2 or 3 or 4. So, we've really got to take our time to get to know people, to know what our expectations should be, and not jump the gun on them and smother them. So we'll talk more about this again, but until next time, we'll see you later.
Yes, thanks.
We hope this episode of the Called to Love podcast has enriched your life and offered valuable principles to apply on your personal journey. Please explore our website at www.calledto.love for more information and to share your feedback with us. Until our next episode, may you find peace and love. And always remember, you are called to love.